you what is the net operating income, or are they asking you what is the before tax cash flow? Okay. Remember, don't add in that debt service as part of your operating expenses. Wait and deduct it at the end if they ask for it. If they don't ask for it, then you just give them the NOI, which in this case was $33,300. What's in the bank is $13,300 because they've got a $20,000 a year mortgage. Does that make sense? Any questions about it? Okay. Then let's talk about the gross rent multiplier. This is a way a investor can determine what should I pay for a rental property, residential. Residential is 1 to 4 units of dwellings. This example does not include any operating expenses. So there's no NOI connected with it. It's just straight sales price and rent. And you can do it on a monthly basis or an annual basis. I personally prefer to do it on a monthly basis. Okay. So let's look at an example of it. We're going to have 4 comparable sales that are rental property. And if you take what that property sold for and divide it by the monthly income, that will give you a number. And that number is a gross rent multiplier. I call this the PIG formula, P-I-G. Price divided by income equals GRM, gross rent multiplier. Okay. So your first comp sold for $100,000 and is renting for $830 monthly. Divide 100,000 by 830, and it gives you a gross rent multiplier of 120. Then your second comp sold for $120,000, rents for $1,000 a month. So divide 120,000 by 100, and that gives you the 120 gross rent multiplier. But there's 2 more comps. The third one sold for $115,000, rents for $960 a month. Divide those 2, and that gives you 120. And then the fourth one sold for $105,000 and rents for $865. When you divide those 2, it gives you a 121. Okay. Now you can average those 4, and it'll come out to be 120. Okay. Now that we know what your gross rent multiplier is, you take the rent that you want to make. In this example, they say they want to make $1,000 a month. Rent that house for $100,000. You can take that, not $100,000, 1,000, and multiply that times the gross rent multiplier. And that will give you what you should pay for that house in order to make money at $1,000 a month. Does that make sense? Okay, very good. Let me give you an example to work. Okay. Oh, Christina, your first formula is PIG, price divided by income equals gross rent multiplier. And then your rent times the gross rent multiplier gives you the value. All right. Now, this is not on the PowerPoint, so you're going to have to write it down. Let's suppose your gross rent multiplier is 115. 115. And you want to generate $1,500 a month rent. What would you be willing to pay for that property? Christina, we're not talking about paying off debt here. We're talking about rental property. What should you pay for this property in order to generate $1,500 a month? This is not sales. It's not debt. It is income from rental property. 172.50 is right. If you had a gross rent multiplier of 115 and you wanted to have $1,500 monthly rent, then you would pay 172.5. Keisha, the problem is your gross rent multiplier is 115. And you want $1,500 a month income. What should you pay for the property? And to calculate that, you multiply income times the gross rent multiplier. And that'll give you $172,500. Any questions about the gross rent multiplier? Okay. You can do the gross rent multiplier one of two ways. You can do it monthly, or you can do it annual. Either way is okay. Okay, here's you another. This one's doing it annually. The one we did before was monthly. This one is annual. The monthly gross rent multiplier is 120. If your annual rent is $1,200, what is the value? $120,000, right? It's $120,000. See, I think doing it annually just adds another step that you don't really need. They took the annual, divided by 12 to get it down to monthly. If you just do it monthly to begin with, you don't have that step. That's why I like doing it monthly better. But any way you do it is fine, as long as you come up with the right answer. All righty. Once the appraiser has tried to use all three approaches, so the GRM is just for comparing the prompt. Yes, and it's rental. Now remember, the gross rent multiplier is for rental property. It's not to use all three approaches. Then he's going to look at that and decide which approach is best suited for the property that I am appraising. If it is a single family home, What's the best approach to use for single family? It's the one that we use to do our CMA. Right, the comparables. CMA, sales comparison approach, is the best approach to use for residential sales. But if it's a unique property, such as a fire department or a school building, which approach would be most comparable? Sales comparison, cost, or income? Cost approach, right. Because the sales comparison approach, he probably would not even be able to use at all, because won't find 3 buildings like that have sold in the last 6 months. And it's not an income producing property, so the income capitalization would not be very good. But the cost approach is what he would use for that unique building. And then if it was a shopping center or an apartment building, which approach would he use?
Income.
Income, right. He used the income capitalization approach. Now, he will look at those appraisals and those 3 different approaches and say, okay, this is the best one for this type property. And he'll determine the value based on that. He will not take the 3 prices and average them. We never, ever average on an appraisal. You analyze an appraisal, but you do not average. Okay, so here's your breakdown. Single family residential, sales comparison approach. Unique property, cost approach. An income producing commercial property is the income capitalization approach. Everybody good with those 3?
No. Cost, income.
Okie dokie. Let's talk about a BPO, broker price opinion. By definition, a broker price opinion and a comparative market analysis is the same thing. But generally, we do a comparative market analysis for our client, either the seller before they list the property or a buyer client before they make an offer on a property. A BPO, on the other hand, is usually requested by a third-party asset company. They want a broker to help determine a probable sales price for that property. We don't determine value, but we can determine what a probable sales price would be. And we have to do it according to North Carolina license law. Article 6 of license law deals with BPOs and CMAs. And I want us to look at what's included in that in a minute, but right here's most of it. A BPO can only be done for a fee by a non-provisional broker. In other words, a full broker. Once you've removed the provisional status by doing 90 hours of additional education, then you can do a BPO and charge for it. But as a provisional, you cannot. And the price that you quote will be probable sales price, not value. Or you may be doing it for rental property, and then you would determine a probable monthly rent for that property. Okay. BPO must be in writing, and it must be performed in accordance with Article 6 of the license law. Now, I want to tell you what's in Article 6. Broker price opinion and comparative market analysis. By definition, it is an estimate prepared by a licensed real estate broker that details the probable selling price or leasing price of a particular property, of which the broker has knowledge of the market conditions, property condition, neighborhood, and information on comparable properties. That's the definition of a BPO and a CMA. Okay? If you are asked to do a BPO and it is in connection with any type of loan, then you must turn it down. If a third-party asset company asks you to do it for a mortgage or a refi or a pre-foreclosure, all of those things require an appraisal, and we cannot do it. They may ask you to do it because typically they pay about $100 for a BPO, maybe $500 for an appraisal. So they'll try to slip it by and get you to do it, but don't, because if you do, you're violating license law and you are violating the appraisal licensing board as well. Okay. If you charge a fee for it, you must be a full broker, non-provisional status. It must be in writing, and it must address all the matters that are required by the law, and that includes the property address, how you make the comparables, explanation of your comparables. Why did you choose that comparable? And you've got to include a price range, or you can do a definite price, as long as they understand it is a probable selling price or probable listing price, not of value. Okay? You must keep the assignment in your files for 3 years. Attach it to your copy of the CMA or the BPO. Okay. You must do it in a competent manner. If you're not competent in doing it, then give it to somebody else. Let them do it. Okay. The Commission does not consider compensation for a broker of general knowledge services and there to be a fee. So you can get a fee for it. Donna says, sounds like it'd be more work. It is. It is more work than you want to do for what they pay to do. When these third-party asset companies send you, now this, I haven't done one in many years, but when I did, the form they sent you to do it on was just like an appraisal form. And the information you had to give and the explanations you had to give for what you did is very time consuming. Very time consuming. Okay? All right. Now let me tell you what else the law says. You shall accept the assignment only if you have direct knowledge of the property. You must do an interior and exterior examination of the property. unless your written instructions tell you they do not want interior. If they don't tell you no interior, then you've got to go inside and do it from the outside as well. Okay? Utilize of appraisal, which is those terms that we learned yesterday, conforming, contribution, substitution, change, all those. Got to use that terminology in doing your BPO. You must use a minimum of 3 comparables. They have to be the same property type, location, use, size, design, all that has to be the same, just like our CMAs that we do for our clients have to be the same. Make adjustments for features that are different by adding or subtracting from the sales price of the comparable. Don't touch the subject property. Okay? If the price that you come up with on your comps is more than 10% different, then you've got to write an explanation of why you chose comps that were more than 10% different in value. So they want your comps to be less than 10% difference in your prices. Any questions about a BPO? Okay. We just did that. The screen says we should have you prepare a BPO. We're not going to do that in a computer class. We're just not going to do it. Okay? All right. Question. A provisional broker is asked to perform a CMA for her client who